How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the Science of Fantasy Football. Why the Science of Fantasy Football? You get a meteorologist, that's me, and a biologist together, that's the professor. We're going to use the scientific method, and that is guaranteed to make you smarter when it comes to fantasy football. In fact, folks, if you learn how to use the scientific
Sorry.
method, you will be smarter about everything in life because you'll be using data in a smarter way. And joining me as he does each and every week here on the Science of Fantasy Football, he is the fantasy professor. He's a real professor. It's John Bush. John, we got 6 weeks in the books,
Yep.
almost halfway to the playoffs.
Yep. It's exciting. First flying, trades are flying, people are speculating. Experts are coming out of the hills proclaiming lots of things to do. And it adds to the confusion, more data, metrics, and things being thrown around. And I'm not sure this is right, but I posted a video lesson today. Does more information increase our accuracy? And I was got a video where I attempted to at least discuss that topic a little bit. And I figure we'll go to the whiteboard. I got a few things to say there, but anyway, I'm looking forward to discussing, looking at the snap reports of the teams that are losing the wide receivers, and I guess one team gaining a running back, and all the moving pieces, Dennis. So we'll try to plow through this at this show here and see where we end up. But uh, I think clarity is still going to be elusive until we actually see what happens by the end of the, I guess, Monday night. We'll know exactly what it is we think we need to know or don't know or something.
And that is a great lead into my gripe
Oh, we
today,
got a
which
gripe.
I
Okay,
got a
good.
gripe because it crosses over from weather and climate talk in the media and on social media and fantasy football because I noticed something and it might just be a casual type of relationship when it comes to age and levels of uncertainty. But in the meteorology business, I have noticed that the younger the forecaster, the more they will try to convince you that they are all knowing about a weather event ahead of time or even things like climate change versus those like myself who have been around for 40 plus years as a professional meteorologist. I'm smart enough to understand, Professor, that there are times that I don't even know what I don't know, and that I'm a skeptic about everything that I see. Because, for instance, when it comes to climate change, I see data that tells me that man is changing the environment that we live in. It's obvious in the data. And then I see other data that says, okay, if carbon dioxide is the culprit, if greenhouse gases are the culprit, why aren't we seeing other changes in the atmosphere that would have to happen? Atmospheric physics equations tell you that if you change this, you got to change that, and that there's a reaction, and for every reaction there's another reaction. There's changes that happen anytime you tweak a variable in an equation. The output changes, and we're not seeing that consistently yet. If I question a piece of data and say, what's going on here? Is it possible we're just really bad at measuring temperature? And there was just a study that came out that said that the lack of maintenance at weather observation sheds might contribute about 44% of the rise we've seen in temperatures over the last 2 decades. Is this true? Is it false? Is it a legitimate study? You know what has to happen, Professor. When new data comes out, there has to be more studies about it to find out if it's real or not. The same thing happens in fantasy football. Those like you and I, who have been playing for many, many years, Bob Harris, Jim Coventry, Greg Kellogg, all of the OGs, they see something happen like we're seeing this week with 2 wide receivers changing teams in the middle of the season. We're seeing running backs coming out of nowhere and having a good game off the bench. And the younger fantasy football experts, so self-proclaimed experts, remember, I'm not a fantasy football expert, I'm a fantasy football researcher. There's a difference. But these self-proclaimed younger experts are, oh, this is what's going to happen. Forget Garrett Wilson because Davante Adams is going to be the new number one and everything's going to ripple down from there. Or don't worry about Garrett Wilson because this, and this. Those of us smart enough to understand the data and to decipher situations where, look at Minnesota, for instance. Jordan Addison is a terrific wide receiver. His value in fantasy football is capped because he plays with the best wide receiver in fantasy football right now in Justin Jefferson. So you can't finish first and second in fantasy football as wide receivers or as running backs. It's not going to happen. Something has to, there's a value cap. And those of us who've been doing this long enough, it's not that we're smarter. We've made those same mistakes that the younger guys are making and assuming they know everything. So my gripe this week is science knows a lot of things. But for everything that science knows, new data can challenge that long-held assumption that we thought we knew how this worked. The same thing happens in evolution. Our ideas on how evolution, the exact details of how this works, those are always evolving too, pardon the pun. And in fantasy football, our knowledge of the game of football itself is always changing. So our knowledge of the game has to always catch up, and our knowledge of fantasy football is always catching up. But what do we do as fantasy football? We chase last week's points. Oh, he had 15, he had 20, he had 30 points. We want him on our team this week. And then we never see that game again. My hope, Professor, is that folks will realize that saying you're 100% sure and, oh, this is what's going to happen is great for getting attention on social media, but it's not the truth. We don't know to any level of certainty. I could make arguments of why why Garrett Wilson's value will either go up or go down. I can make a logical argument on either side of that debate. We need to start being honest with each other, Professor, that we have to see the experiment play out in real time before we'll really understand it. Yes, we can make a forecast. We can make an educated guess. But even our best educated guess on something in fantasy football, if we have an 80% confidence level in that, I would be shocked because every week I'm left with lineup decisions where if I had to say what my percentage of being right or wrong on those last flex positions, if I get 70% of them right, Professor, I'd be thrilled. But we act like we know it all when in science and in fantasy football, sometimes we've got to be honest that we don't even know what we don't know.
The brought up a lot of things to think about. Where do I say? The and this leads into what I wanted to talk about. The more information, at least the data that has been presented implies that more information increases our confidence, but doesn't increase our accuracy. And I've posted a video lesson where I show this simple graph, and they gave I think it was basketball handicappers, and maybe I'll try the whiteboard here, see if I can pull it up, Dennis. I've never tried. Here's whiteboard. Let's see. I don't know. New whiteboard. Let's see what I don't show again. More says more work, less clicks. I hope we're seeing that. So highlighter. So I'm gonna do the pen. So the graph here, and the amount of information is down here on the X, and the accuracy is on the Y. And if we look, this is the accuracy. This is our psychological confidence. And so we get really confident that we're about as good as we were down here, where we had no confidence or low confidence. That's not what you want to see, Dennis. And
No.
so we're tricked. We think that if we're here, this is going to be here, and it's not. So I think they had like 10, 20, 30, 40 pieces of information about a basketball game, stats, players, dribble index. I don't know. I don't follow that. And free throw accuracy and half court, all this data, and I don't know, whatever it was, pieces of information. And that was the actual figure, but confidence versus accuracy here, Dennis. And it's not that right. So part of it is we want this to be true, because there's when you think about how we think, the guy that invented behavioral economics, he won the Nobel Prize, a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. And he said we have two systems of thinking, system one and system two. System one is fast, quick, very fight or flight. One. Two is Spock-like, logic, Vulcan driven. It takes a lot of mental effort to fight your lazy tendency to, oh yeah, I understand that, next, versus, hold it now, let me spend lots of time thinking and really chewing through this. Nobody wants to do this. They want to drink 2, 3 beers and they're happy with system one thinking. In fantasy, that's why they have these instant reactions, and that just grinds my gears. Everybody has instant reaction. What they're saying is everybody's running to the quick and frugal. And Dennis, you're saying, well, why did we evolve as humans? And you talked about evolution. Because jumping up a tree when you heard a leaf crinkle was good, because it could be a saber-toothed cat.
Yep.
So our ancestors had good system one. Okay. System two, those guys were the medicine doctors, the witch doctors of the tribe, or the leaders. But a lot of times a leader could be heavily system one, because if you're running out of food, you just got, okay, we're going over that mountain. I don't know what the hell, there may be a herd of ferocious beast over there, but we got to, there's nothing here. So y'all, I'm going to show you, I'm confident. Let's all march, into this dark cave and see what we can catch. And is it, a saber-toothed bear, or is it a, little bunny rabbit we can eat? And so we're all products of we're survivors. Our ancestors were survivors. So system one worked 10,000 years ago. We have not had enough time in fantasy football to evolve. And I would argue the best ones are the ones that have the system two thinking and ignore the instant reaction. Understand it, hear it, but use that as, okay, there's your question. In other words, I like to hear people's instant reaction because they're to me proposing a question. Devontae Adams is coming here and they're going to say this, but I said, well, how do we know that? What's gone on in other situations like this? In other words, pull the similarities and compare. It's called reference class forecasting. I mentioned that before. And I did a study. I tried to look at snap changes, and I think there's clues there. But now, Dennis, I'm starting to wonder if scoring levels at the position is better to follow. In other words, you're not following like, okay, Jerry Jeudy is now the number one in Cleveland, therefore we'll pay attention to him. Might it be better to follow all the wide receivers in Cleveland after Cooper leaves and look at their scoring level? In other words, I think if you focus too much on Jerry Jeudy, maybe there's some uptick in some other things, and we're missing, say, a 10% scoring gain for all wide receivers in Cleveland. Or maybe there's none, or maybe there's a decrease. In other words, right, you can go up, stay the same, go down. And I'm thinking if you jump too much into it, you might miss something. So I think another one of these projects, Dennis, that I know you got a file because every time I get an idea, I have to text you. So
Yep.
that's my hypothesis now, is that's the method we are to use going back over looking at some of our data. And I think we can include injuries
Oh
and
yeah.
get
Yep.
a sense. So if we knew, okay, when a big person like a Cooper leaves, the data suggests on average the wide receivers increase, the ones that are left, there's an increase in what they've done as a collective by 10%. In other words, what you would have to do is go in and throw out Cooper's metrics and take everybody else before and then follow that after he's gone. So how much did that number go up? And then try to find 10, 15, 20 times and then get do a box of whiskers and get kind of a extremes versus a average or a median kind of thing. And that would be, I believe, how we'd have to do the study. And Dennis, I know it's not going to shock you. I have not heard a single expert on radio or Twitter discuss that's how they would propose research to answer that question. I mean, how many years have we gone every year something like these things happen, and yet we're still stuck in system one, instant reaction. Okay, I did that. I'm done. Everybody hear me. If I'm right, I'll pro about it. If I'm wrong, you'll forget and you'll buy
Yeah.
my subscription service next
Yep.
year anyway, because you don't know that I don't know anything, because I crow and squawk and I, it sounds like I know something, right? The louder I squawk and the more confident I sound, well, I must know something. No, you're just a loud fool. So uh Dennis, that's what I think I can do. Now, let me circle back around. Do we think it's worth that? In other words, I don't mind doing the study. My issue is, okay, I can do that, and Dennis and I will know it, and we'll have, I don't know, Dennis, how many listen to us, two or three, I don't know. We'll never be, on ESPN. I know I need to be because I could really do a lot more research, but come on, people don't want the two. They want the one.
Yeah.
I want my candy, cookie, cake now. I don't want to have to work for it. I'm the ground, I'm the grasshopper. I'm not the ant. I'm not storing everything and then I want it, right? I'm not the, you know, I don't want to work for it, Dennis. I want it now. I want the fire now. I don't want to learn how to chop damn wood. That's for suckers.
Yep.
I want you to chop the wood for me and I can sit back. Does that sound like politics, right? I want to vote for somebody who gives me the fire now and tax people so we'll get their wood. I'll take their wood and make sure I'm toasty warm, right? I'm going to vote for them because they're promising me I'll get a bigger wood pile. And of course, the other candidate sees that. Well, I'll give you even more wood, right? Or I'll give you wood plus cable TV for free if you vote for me. So it becomes an arms race, right? So there, yeah, you like that, right? There's politics right there. I could run, but that's what it occurred to me. So I guess and I tried to do this last year, and I think I got focused too much on the players, not the position. And
Yep.
maybe even track the team level is as well. In other words, people worried about what does it really hurt it at the end of the day in 6 weeks if we tracked the team PPR scoring points per snap for all the skill position. Does it really? How much has it changed versus having Cooper there or not? I don't know that, but that would be some of the things. That would be the metrics I would want to track. And then if I knew that, then I'm thinking, is it worth all that work versus finding another secret metric that might make me more? So that's the thing when you do research, you don't know because we have limited time in our life, Dennis. We don't get to live forever. That is it worth doing? And I'm not convinced I have to do that because if I'm winning now without having to do that in the leagues, do I need to bust my butt over this? I don't know yet. I hadn't decided. I just think I know how I would approach it. And if I get bored, I can come back and do that. And now that I've said it and brought it out to you, you'll help me remember, Dennis. If you if we're curious come February, March, that would be, I think, a way to look at it. You like my
Yeah.
whiteboard, by the way?
I love
Pretty
the
neat. Yeah,
I love the whiteboard. And I'll
yeah,
back to your graph. So
mhm,
two things on the graph.
yeah,
I learned this in my harness race handicapping system because if you look at the whole system, there were about 10 or 12 steps in it, depending on what you determine as a full step. And after a while, I realized, boy, this is a heck of a lot of work for every race.
yep.
So I did a little analysis on which of the parts were more important. And I soon realized that there was one part of the whole scheme that was much more important. So instead of calculating the number for all of the horses, 10 horses in a race for a harness race, I could use the first system to narrow that field from 10 to some races as few as two or three. And that saved me a great deal of time. So having more information, having this 10 or 12 step, way of doing things, it didn't increase the accuracy because that first step was, it sorted out. about 90% of the losses right there. So if you can all of a sudden get down to the 10%, you get you're eliminating only 10% of the stray winners that your system probably wouldn't have caught anyway, because they were the long shots that were the weird races, or sometimes even the favorites that you didn't want to bet anyway. So all of a sudden, I can save myself an immense amount of time. Weather forecast, we've gone through the same problem. When I first came into the weather forecasting business in the early 80s, Professor,
Yeah.
we had one real computer model to forecast the weather. It was the LFM, and we knew that it had limitations. The other model that they had really was just vector analysis. It was called the barotropic. It didn't change the systems, it just moved them. So that wasn't even really I didn't even consider that a real dynamic model. But our accuracy was pretty good because we understood the limitations of the models, and we got to the point where we got really good with a man-machine mix. Fast forward to now, and there are so many models. Like there were like 30 different models for the hurricane. And if you look at even the GFS model alone, there's 51 runs of that model. What you see come out is the consensus, but there's 51 different solutions for each weather model, basically. So if you were to look at all of the weather models and then look at all of their perturbations, all of their runs, you probably have over 300 pieces of model guidance to look at. And it's actually made the accuracy go down because there's too much data and there's too much conflicting data. I jokingly say now in the weather forecasting business, okay, I got a forecast for you to do. Do you want rain, snow, dry? I can find a model that will forecast whatever you want. And like our fantasy football brethren who come up with a hot take and then cherry pick a stat to back it up, there are weather forecasters that keep looking for a model until they find the one that produced the big storm that they want. Oh, see, this one had the storm. 10 days out, it predicted the storm. You tell them, yeah, it predicted a storm 10 days ago, and nothing is on the map yet. So it was wrong. But they keep looking for that one model that they can brag about that has the big storm on it. It hasn't increased the accuracy of weather forecasting. Sometimes you have to have a legitimate method that works, which would be a number 2, as you said.
Yeah, that's type of thinking. Yeah.
Type of thinking. Our dynamics, where we use 6 different metrics this season.
Well, we're testing, right?
We're testing.
We're testing, right? Test.
But Professor, look at the wide receivers that it picked. Chris
consensus,
Godwin. Chris Godwin was our consensus versus ADP guy that we wanted on all of our teams. Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed. These were guys that we really liked more than the ADP did.
Right.
I would say early returns.
It is tempting to think that, Dennis.
Yep. Early returns, and I stress early returns because we don't know what we don't know yet.
Yeah.
We haven't done the analysis, the postseason analysis. But here's an interesting case with this whole Amari Cooper. What does he do to Garrett Wilson? So remember at the beginning of the season this year, when it was either Stephon Diggs or Nico Collins, it would be awful because 2 guys couldn't coexist on the same team.
Yep.
So if
except Puka and Cooper Kupp last year.
Yes, exactly. So here's my theory when it comes to 2 really good wide receivers. if they're pretty balanced. And this goes to my knowledge of real football from watching it my whole life. If you have one really great wide receiver and you have a really good defensive coordinator on the opposing team, what does he do? He makes sure that great player doesn't beat him. If another player steps up, then you're going to get beat. But, Spags with the Chiefs, if you look at every week, the best player on the opposing team will not beat the Chiefs unless he has just an unbelievable game. Usually it's the second banana that steps up. But if you have two really great wide receivers like Diggs and Collins, so between the two of them, week one, when they both played, 21 points for Diggs, 17 points for Collins. You'd take either one of those games, right?
Yep.
Week two, 7 for Diggs, 27 for Collins. So we're starting to see a trend. There's about 34 to 40 points that these two can score. Week 3, 20 and 12. Week 4, 18 and 33. So they even went above what we expected.
Yep.
Then 14 and 15, the final week. You couldn't stop them because you had two great wide receivers, and both of them were fantastic for fantasy football. Maybe they weren't number one, but both of them were top 10. Similar with Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams. If Davante Adams is the same player that he was last year, 2 years ago, he's going to get a lot of looks because we've seen Allen Lazard, who is not as great of a player as Davante Adams, get fed the football by Rodgers because Rodgers knows where he's going to be. He knows how he's going to react to what the defense is trying to do.
Right.
He knows Davante Adams even better, and Davante Adams is probably a better player still at his advanced age. So maybe having two great wide receivers prevents a team from taking Garrett Wilson out of the game by double teaming him. Now you got to play kind of an honest defense against both of them.
And that gives some advantage and depending on other factors, right? The run game and the script and there's other factors. That's the thing.
Yes.
This is not in a vacuum.
Yes. And so I wouldn't look at Davante Adams or Garrett Wilson and say, oh, I don't want to have them on my team because there's two great wide receivers. I'll take them. I'll take them both. In fact, if I have a dynasty team
you could play them both.
I could play them both. I'll play them both all day long.
Yeah.
But here's the contrast to that of where this will hurt. It made Mike Williams worthless because now you got three guys ahead of him.
Yep.
Plus you got Breece Hall. Plus you got Braylon Allen. Yep. You got 5 playmakers ahead of Mike
it's time
Williams
to get for our best ball shares. It is time. I need some resurrection somewhere else.
We need Mike Williams to be picked up by the Chiefs or somebody else.
Somewhere else.
Yeah. So, but that's how this is going to impact. It's not going to impact at the top end.
No.
It's going to impact the third and the fourth best wide receivers on that team. Similarly, Amari Cooper going to Buffalo just made Curtis Samuel worth dropping, and he was already worth dropping.
And I started thinking about the rookie. You wonder, in other words, I had hoped that he was going to find that consistency and keep moving up. And I'm wondering if that delays.
Yes, it does. It probably does.
Maturation.
Yeah, I think that's a great assumption because you've got Khalil Shakir, who's already beat out the rookie.
Yes.
As the alpha wide receiver. Now, Shakir takes a drop as well with Cooper coming on because Shakir is not a Nico Collins or a Stephon Diggs.
Nope.
Not yet.
Not yet.
And probably never. Okay. He's a very good wide receiver who is probably not elite. but he has a really good quarterback throwing to him, and Josh Allen and Amari Cooper have never played together, and Shakir and Allen have. So
Yeah.
maybe there's a growing pain there, but I agree. I've got shares of Coleman that I'm thinking I'll kind of play
So I'm
maybe a,
wondering in a few weeks, I'm wondering if I was a dynasty person, I might consider, if he's been spiky, hit or miss, maybe there's a disappointment that you could
yes.
take advantage of and get him on the cheap,
Yep.
maybe down the road. I mean,
And I love doing that with disappointing rookies in their first year. I made all kinds of trades
yeah,
in a couple of dynasty leagues where my throw-ins over the years, remember AJ Brown did not have a great rookie year. You could get him as a throw-in on a deal if people really wanted the player on your roster that they wanted. So you could get that plus one. Nico Collins was the same way. He had an awful rookie year.
I remember that.
I got Nico Collins added as a plus one. If they wouldn't throw a second round pick in or a first round, another draft pick in to the mix, I'd say, well, I'll throw Nico Collins in. Or another guy that I got after his rookie year who had an awful rookie year too, Kyron Williams. And all of a sudden, the path opened for volume. And now he's the number one running back, according to my combined metrics in weekly value. So these rookies that are failures year one, those are the guys you want to add in Dynasty every time.
So let's just real quick look at this is my snaps data. Let me let's just go directly to the team level snaps. So Cleveland, then Dennis, here that is. So it was Cooper, Judy, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman have been the four, right?
Yeah.
Nobody else, not I don't see nothing in the other three that have played.
Nope.
Uh,
Nope.
so people are saying Judy because he got 52 last week, 38 more. Their overall snap average, though, 54-50. That's pretty close. Scoring wise, Judy was double, and Tillman wasn't even in the mix. So it looks to me like it could be more of a 1A, 1B type. So maybe more, everybody's looking at Judy, maybe more would have a spiky time, but he scored less. So uh, there's nothing here that says I need these, but I would definitely look at more for part of my dollar train when I set up, dollar gambles with some dead, like Mike Williams, Dennis, just became
Oh,
expendable to me.
Deadwood. Yeah. Yeah. I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Uh, you know, I'm not rushing quite now because I'm hoping maybe trading. I don't know when trading ends, but if I need somebody, I could see. And by the way, for people can check the report out in orange or just players that I'm intrigued by. Doesn't mean go get them. It just means watch, look, think about it. But that's how I'm reading my system one's instant reaction, right? Fall in line with everybody else. It's what it looks to me. So I'm not just enamored with Jerry Judy, But notice Cooper scoring it wasn't much better than Judy's. So I
No,
know that, Buffalo thinks they're getting something, and maybe in that context, in other words, Cooper was at that level, and I think the assumption is he's going to ascend because it's a new environment. So Judy is going to be stuck at 0.16. I mean, that's not Njoku was 0.19, even better than both of them. So that kind of thing. And of course, if you look at even Deontay Foreman's 0.18. So scoring wise, yeah, they were piss poor. I'm just not sure I'd run and get a lot of Judy either. In other words, there's nothing here that would suggest, you spend it. Are they worth $1 play or $10 out of 1,000? Okay. If you need a body, Judy looks like he's going to get some opportunity. I just don't know. Is it going to be greater than 50 to 60? He's had 60 before. I mean, is it going to
Yes.
be 70? Is that what you're telling me?
No,
Okay. If he can get 70 snaps, I just don't see. I mean, there's, only 1 week. First week they had 70 snaps, but the other weeks they've 60's been kind of that limit. And I'm not seeing anything that suggests Judy is anything that we should rush out and get.
no. Here's what I'm going to say is that Jerry Jeudy is not taking over for Amari Cooper. Cedric Tillman is. So Jerry Jeudy is what Jerry Jeudy is.
Yes,
But the guy that could benefit the most
could
from
be.
this is Cedric Tillman, and we have no idea
We had
what
no
he can
idea.
do as a player because he's never been in this role.
Oh, so he's a rookie.
He's a young player. He's second year man.
Ah,
So
well, see
he's
that
never,
I didn't
yeah,
know, Dennis.
yeah.
Okay,
So
that's a new piece of information then.
yes, so he's never been in a situation where he has been a guy that you have to count on. Okay, he's always been okay. Hopefully he develops. Hopefully he develops. Hopefully he develops. But he, this is his second year.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
last year he played in 11 games. He had a total of 44 targets over those 11 games, playing,
yeah,
part-time role. He only had 21 catches out of 44 targets.
yeah.
So he's this is not an elite player. He was a third round pick. He is a big body. Guy's 6'3". So he fits a similar role on the outside, like Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
Could he develop into a great player? Yes, he could. Third
So
round
it
picks.
sounds like to me just what you said, but
uh,
he would definitely be in the dollar range then for
I
a
would,
roll of the dice.
yes, and I would, based on one belief that I'm still holding on to when it comes to Cleveland,
Yeah.
is that one of two things has got to happen going forward because Nick Chubb is back. They will play better with a great running back like Chubb back there instead of
Or
guys like Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman. These are guys that are just journeyman level running backs. Now you get a guy who at one time in his career was one of the 5 best running backs in all of football. He's a big, tough runner. That offense is going to get better. So one of two things is going to happen. Either Deshaun Watson all of a sudden looks like a better quarterback, or the fan pressure
yeah.
builds to the point where they realize, hey, we got to take a chance and see if this Jameis Winston kid can do anything because Deshaun Watson isn't the player he was back in Houston. So if either of those things happen, if all of a sudden Deshaun Watson figures this thing out because they got a running game again and can be half, even 2/3 of the quarterback he was in the past, we don't care about interceptions. He'll continue to throw interceptions. He'll continue to fumble. Who cares about that? But he had a live arm at one point and a pretty accurate arm back in his Houston days. He's either going to get back to that, closer to that he is now, than he has been the first 6 weeks, or he's going to be gone. Nobody's going to tolerate that. And they're going to take a chance on the next man up at quarterback. And maybe Winston will be better. Maybe he doesn't. But yeah, I'll take a speculation on Tillman. I'll grab a couple of shares of Tillman and see what happens.
So let me pull up Vegas then.
Oh,
Here,
God,
yeah.
that is going to be really
Devontae's
interesting.
gone, but he look 0 point. So 4 snaps got you a point. That's encouraging. That
Yeah.
anything closer to that level gets my attention. I think very intriguing that Myers and Trey Tucker seem to be more of the 1A, 1B. In other words, I don't see, is Myers the next alpha? I'm not the snaps thought that, but then I guess week 5 it looked that they were closer, but that's my thinking is I'm not sure Trey Tucker isn't worth $1 versus everybody rushes to Myers. I I don't know. And this other kid, DJ Turner and Wilkinson and Bachman have got some snaps. So I don't know if they're somebody we need to look at.
So Vegas is an interesting team because they're going nowhere fast. I thought Trey Tucker might sort of fill the heard this. I talked about this phrase being used last week about another player. I thought maybe Trey Tucker could develop into sort of the Timo version of a Tank Dell like guy, short, quick, slot guy.
Yeah.
So with Cleveland, Cedric Tillman is the type of player that instantly takes over for Amari Cooper's role on that team. With Vegas, they don't have one.
Yeah.
Trey Tucker and DJ Turner are both these little scat back kind of guys that are quick. Wilkerson, nothing there. McAllister is the intriguing one, but he was an undrafted free agent rookie. So there really is no plug and play. So that becomes more of a distribution of the targets.
Mm-hmm.
And in such a case like that, I think you've got to say Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers are the two guys that are probably going to benefit. And here's what I can tell you. Week 5, week 4, they did. They did better with Devontae out. And with a quarterback change now, Minshew was not doing great. Now, O'Connell's not doing great. So you don't have either guy that is really doing much, but we did see, some level of performance, but mostly it was Brock Bowers. He had the biggest game week 5. And, Jacoby Myers is okay games 4 and 5 with Devontae out. So I kind of look at Myers as being, instead of before where you kind of figured you were going to get maybe 6 to 12 for Myers, and when he gave you a game better than that with Devontae Adams in the game, that was a treat. To now maybe he's an 8 to 16 point guy without Devontae Adams, because he will now be the guy, and he doesn't even get the he's the guy treatment, because if I was a defensive coordinator, the guy I want to stop is Brock Bowers. He's been a monster.
Yeah.
So
it's just hard to guard him.
It's very hard to guard him because he's quick, he's big, and he can play all over the field. He can be on the outside. He can be in the slot. He can be a typical tight end. You can move him around. You can't guard him with the typical, linebacker that would handle a typical tight end. And, you need to put a slot corner on him is what you need to do to stop him. And that frees up Myers to be okay. He's not going to necessarily always get the best guy on the other team. And Bowers is the guy they have to stop, but there is no guy to substitute in for Devontae Adams. Like Tillman fits the size and everything. He plays the same position as Amari Cooper, just not as well. But we haven't really seen him on the field that often.
Gotcha.
With Vegas, they don't have anybody. I would not be surprised to see a Mike Williams land out
Wouldn't
in
that be
Vegas
interesting?
as a stopgap, just to give them another player. I wouldn't be surprised even to see MVS get picked up by them because he's been let go by Buffalo. But nothing that will go on with Vegas really intrigues me. Jacoby Myers, if you got him on a dynasty roster, he got a little bit better. He got a little more reliable. He was already my last flex guy anyway.
Yeah. Here's Buffalo. So notice last week with Shakir kind of, I don't know, hurt or
Gimpy.
something.
Gimpy.
Yeah. Hollins and Coleman were fighting together. And Coleman's got a .22. That not bad for scoring. Shakir obviously was great at .03. So with the new Cooper in town, does he get to a .3, 3 snaps for a point? That's a Dennis. That would be amazing if a player could do that. And see, I haven't done the research to know what does a team look like in scoring points per snap with this kind of thing. I'm curious, and I'd have to go back and look, but right now it seems amazing that that could ever happen. So it seems more like a point, a 2.5, going up a little from a .18 to a .0, 2.5 seems more realistic. And it would almost say Shakir and Cooper are 1A, 1B. That, in other words, I don't think Cooper automatically beats out Shakir. I don't know if people are thinking that, puts Shakir back. I don't see that. I'm having a hard time seeing that. Coleman is the one given the rookie. He's been uneven, but he's been better than everybody else. And if you didn't know that, you should. And I've been trying. I mean, he hadn't been really available. Everybody grabbed him, but I could see that number could go down to like .15 or something, maybe even 1, and people get disappointed and forget about him. And with a new team or next year, who knows if Cooper's there, he could come back and everybody be surprised. So I think he's flashing now. .022 is intriguing for a rookie. But again, I don't know the metrics to know what's a scoring expectation for a rookie. I need to figure that out in my studies on off season. But anyway, and I don't see Holland. It seems like he's been around there a long time, so
Oh yeah.
I don't see him ascending with this situation either.
No, he's the kind of guy that when they play 3 wide receiver sets,
Mm-hmm.
he's the guy that is on the field. But here's the interesting thing with Shakir.
Mm-hmm.
Even before the addition of Amari Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
Shakir was not getting the bulk of the snaps, which
No,
tells me there's certain things that he does in real football that doesn't fit with what they're trying to do. And we saw MVS with more snaps in
week
week
3.
3.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing Hollins with the similar snaps each and every game. Hollins is that working class kind of wide receiver who fits several different roles. I think Shakir does a few things and does them very well, but he is not as versatile. The rookie, ironically, has beat him out in snaps most games, with the exception of week 3 when he got hurt.
Yep.
So otherwise, he's been over 40 snaps. Maybe Coleman's snaps don't drop. Maybe Hollins and Shakir and Samuel all see their snaps drop. It's going to be very interesting. One thing's for sure, for me, is I think Amari Cooper is in as the most played guy week 1 for them. I think he'll get the most snaps. I think he will be the heir apparent to taking over as the alpha WR1. But the gap in scoring per snap between him and Shakir and Coleman will probably be pretty even. The difference is Shakir will continue to play less snaps than Amari Cooper. I think that's what's going to end up happening with Buffalo. But again, I'm honest enough to say my forecast could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's just good to speculate. And by the way, nobody's instant reaction, Dennis, included, I could be wrong. So I give you props for that. The people, you know, I wouldn't know what to do now. I just see the data and I'm trying to see the different ways it could go here. And with the Jets, here's Wilson. That's all I heard, Wilson. But Lazard has been doing as well as Wilson. Why does Lazard take a back seat to versus Wilson? In other words, is it predestined that Wilson, stays like he is and Lazard goes away? I'm confused as to where that became truth with the addition of Adams. I'm confused. It looks to me like it could be Williams is gone, so those 30 are gone. So it looks like a 1 and a 3A and a 3B. I'm not seeing Wilson being a 2. I don't know. I'm points per snap, snaps. Nothing here suggests that somehow Wilson should stay the 2 and Lazard goes down. I'm missing that story.
And that, and I think that's that's probably a great analysis of what we're seeing here, because when I look at the data, I've got my suspicion of what I think is going to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't have a definite, this is exactly what's going to happen, and there's no possibility of anything else happening. Because here's the way I'm looking at this right now. So Lazard and Wilson were on the field for as many snaps. Like they were as even as you can be.
Yes.
And in points per snap, they were even. But here's the reason. Lazard has 5 touchdowns to 3 for Garrett Wilson. Yardage wise, they're pretty close, 399 to 354.
Yeah.
Here's where the other difference is. Wilson has 67 targets to 40 for Lazard, 41 catches to 26. It's the difference are the touchdowns. And the difference is, but that's it. So when you look at the touchdowns versus the catches, you add it all up.
But if you're a coach,
per snap, it's so close.
Yeah, but if you're a coach, you see, we're thinking like fantasy. But the coaches, they don't give a damn about catches. They want those touchdowns. I'm just
correct.
Lazard's
not going away.
Yeah,
Lazard is not going away.
That's my feeling. Is I just don't know. I think the fate of Wilson and Lazard is more entangled than people that I've heard. That, in other words, if in 6 weeks we look and Lazard's down to the 30s, Williams is gone, that would be very amazing to me. Somebody who's got that many touchdowns, why would you discard him versus, hey, we want him in 3 sets. We want him out there with Wilson and Adams. And he could squirrel away some more Hail Marys and get you some. He might be spiky. In Seattle, we're seeing something kind of like that with JSN. Metcalf is the alpha. Then you got JSN kind of second, but Lockett hadn't gone away. He's been
No.
consistently a second flex kind of usage, for fantasy. In other words, he hadn't been, let's just throw him away. No, on a bye week and a tough situation, Lockett can get you close to median points. So for fantasy, I don't see Lazard being. If they start dropping Lazard, I'll pick him up for $1.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's my guess of what happens is, and I think it's a pretty logical guess, and I can use data to show why I believe that. So Mike Williams started the season very gimpy,
Yes.
and it took him a while to ramp up.
Yep.
Look at Jeremy Ruckert, the second tight ends snaps, and look what happened to them when Williams was healthy.
Yes.
Games 4 and 5.
Yes.
Okay. So take Ruckert's snaps down even more. Maybe he gets 22 snaps instead of 30. And Mike Williams is off the charts. Mike Williams is gone. They'll get rid of Mike Williams off of this roster eventually. And you just take maybe 10 snaps from Garrett Wilson and Lazard combined. But here's the thing. There's a reason that Lazard played 72 snaps on the day that Williams played 51. You saw Lazard get more snaps than Garrett Wilson. I think it's possible that Garrett Wilson loses about 5 snaps a game and Ruckert loses about 5 snaps a game, and maybe Lazard loses 5 snaps a game, and then Williams loses them all, and that's where you come up with 45 to 50 snaps for Davante Adams. Davante Adams is 32 years old. They're going to want to keep him fresh. They're not going to want to play him 70 snaps or 65 snaps a game. They're going to want to play him 50 to 55. That leaves lots of snaps left over for everybody else to be out there. And when they're playing 3 wide receiver sets, Lazard's on the field.
Yeah.
So, and Lazard is very good at blocking on the edge.
Gotcha.
He's not going anywhere, folks. And he's still a very good receiver. And now he's getting covered by the scraps of the other team if they're in man-to-man. He's getting the third best cornerback on them.
Yeah.
Or he's getting a safety on him. Or in zone, he's great at just dissecting those zones. And he's got the relationship.
Yep.
Every bit of the relationship. He's just not as great of a player as Davante Adams, but he's still pretty darn good.
Gotcha. Whew. That wore me out, Dennis. I was doing a lot of my system too. I feel like I've got questions, but I think the Tillman information is what I needed.
Yeah.
And I realize now if I wanted to do this professionally, I would need to have about 3 of you talking to me. You need to clone. I need your icon, 3 of you, and I need to be talking and hearing y'all tell me things. So I'm feeling you didn't probably know, but that's what you add to my data stream, Dennis. You didn't know you just tell your wife, I know I'm good for nothing, but Professor, I'm his data stream.
So
I realize, Dennis, I need three more of you. So you need to get your brothers and sisters going up to speed, and we need to get them on conference. And I need to have y'all telling me things because I got a lot of, I got some critical games coming up. I need to win. So I've decided that it's crystal clear to me this week hearing you talk. It, it just hit me. That's what I need is two more of you in my
say,
ear. So I need three ears and three different Dennis clones talking to me.
well, you're not going to get it from my brothers as well. My brother Mick, if he ever learned uh, the nuances of fantasy football, he
Yeah,
probably thinks more similar to
yeah. I
me
like that thinking.
than the
Yeah,
other ones do.
yeah,
Um, but Mick he's too old. He's loving life at age 79.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Dennis, you
living out
deny
living out
permission
in,
to get old and not think. I do not give you permission for that. So
but
I'm sorry.
but here's the thing, Professor, is
Okay.
this is the pattern recognition of a meteorologist that
Yeah,
comes into
it's like
play.
this elusive thing that I've never. I guess the kind of data that I've dealt with and thinking never was very pattern based. In other words, I would bet animal behaviorists and people that are more at the animal level probably are more pattern. Me, I'm looking at the cell level, right? At the gene level, and it's different kind of thinking. I mean, there's patterns, but it's not. In other words, I need to try to think of how the whole cell react, the system level thinking. And the pattern is a different kind of layer of thinking.
Yes,
And
yes, it
I
is.
haven't had as much experience with that versus thinking in a more top down systems way. And system is the hardest way to think about things anyway. And it's just, it wears me out. So you wore me out thinking of everything you just threw out to me. So just want to let you, but I need two more clones. So tell your wife that we're going to have to order that for Christmas.
And that's why I've been successful at finding these huge bargains in fantasy football because, Professor, I have Sean Tucker. I had Sean Tucker sitting on my taxi squad
I
in
knew you
so many
did.
dynasty leagues because I saw something in his game that told me if this cat ever gets a chance, he could really break through. So he's sitting on a lot of my taxi squads. I just these there's certain players that get squirreled away by me because they they have that something that if they ever get the opportunity, they're gonna have a shot at being a good player. And Chase Brown from Cincinnati was that kind of a guy. Now he was more highly thought of than Tucker, but a lot of people dropped Tucker after his rookie year because he didn't get on the field. Barely got on the field at all. A lot of people got rid of him. I picked him up at the end of the rookie drafts this year and scrolled him away on many of my taxi squads
Nice.
because he's got something about him that I was so intrigued. Another guy that I've got in that similar situation this year is Jordan Mims from the Saints. If that kid ever gets a chance, I think he could do something. The other guy that I'm watching a lot of is this Sion Vaki from Detroit.
Yep.
Obviously, it's going to take a lot of injuries or it's going to take a trade to make him worth something. But he's sitting on a lot of my taxi squads. And the teams that he's not, he'll be there next year
Yep.
because it's just you find these players that you see in preseason or you've seen in their college game, and they have the right size, they have the right everything to be a factor, but they just didn't have that superstar quality for whatever reason to be able to get on the field. Once they get on the field, we see what can happen. And opportunity is such a big part of success in the NFL. And once you get that first opportunity, if you don't shine and you're an undrafted free agent like he is, you're you're destined for the scrap heap. You're destined for the practice squads. But if you get a shot, you can stick around and have a good career. But that's what I see in Cedric Tillman. He of all of those wide receiver situations, Tillman's the most intriguing to me because he's more of a one for one replacement for the guy that's leaving. And that's what I like to look for. That's why I picked up Nico Collins and thought he's got a shot with a better quarterback. Those are the kinds of pattern recognition things. And am I right all the time? Hell no. But what is my strategy, Professor? If there's an potential open situation, I grab both guys that have
Yeah.
a shot at it.
Yeah, I've
Let
seen
it
you do that. Yeah.
let them beat me. Grab both, let it beat me. That's how I got Kamani Vidal and J.K. Dobbins on so many of my teams because
Yes, you did.
I
Play them
knew
both.
Gus wasn't going to be the guy.
Yep. Gus the
So
best. He's gone.
find a backfield that you think could be good because of the style of play they're going to play, and grab 2/3 of that backfield and let it beat you. And that's a strategy that has worked for me over the years. It's because I realize I'm honest enough to say I can't figure out which guy is better. But if I grab them both,
Grab them both.
I've now got a shot at that backfield. If the backfield pans out, if they don't, you move on from the player. You that's the joy of fantasy football. You're not stuck with the same guys on your roster from week 1 to week 16 or 17. You can make substitutions and be patient. If you're going to drop a guy, drop an average wide receiver, hoard running backs. They will often come out.
Yep, I agree with that. Okay, let's talk about my Saints in Denver,
Ooh, yeah.
Dennis. It's Thursday game. First one to throw the power ranks. I've got it, so now you can have this for your week. Here it is,
Ooh.
set up for you. I know it's something that you like for breaking ties and flexes and these kind of things. So here you go. I've got this out, and we'll have the complete game by game and stuff. I'll post that. Should be Saturday for sure after our podcast. But anyway, I think we got the Saints in Denver and power rankings. Those are in the toilet scrap heap, and it makes me extra sad as a Saints fan. So, uh, sad to see that. But there they are. So I'm a little concerned about the fireworks on this, Thursday. I'm skeptical we'll get a lot here. But anyway, the Saints are a little ahead, but really they're the same. I mean, but here's the power ranks, and you can see Atlanta this week. Dennis, look at that. Even above Philadelphia. What is going on with these ranks?
Wow.
It's crazy. And Baltimore is above Atlanta. I don't know. So it's crazy. Cincinnati looking good. San Francisco, Detroit, Minnesota, all looking sweet. And Tennessee is at the bottom.
Ooh.
Cleveland probably.
Ooh.
And Indianapolis, New England's kind of actually they've been on the bottom so much, and Miami, and they've actually at the top of the worst. So that's intriguing. I got high hopes for both those teams. But anyway, here we go. Efficiency wise, I've got those for the weeks here. If you want to see Minnesota number one, they're sitting by themselves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then Washington is number two, Chicago, Atlanta, Tampa Bay out of nowhere. So Indianapolis this week, power ranks are sad, but efficiency they've been outplaying themselves with Flacco, and now I think they're going back. So New Orleans has been really good, and of course this is season long, so those first 2 or 3 games, those metrics are still cooked in that pie, but they've been slowly dropping down here.
Hey,
And
Spencer Rattler looked pretty good.
I thought he did, except not good enough.
No.
But anyway, Kansas City, Dennis, their 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 defense is the difference, and so this
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
measure that. If it was just offense game only, they would just let the just measure the offense and it'd be different. But so this doesn't tell all the story. But KC,
Imagine how tough they might be to beat when they're all of a sudden in the green by the end of the season
can you
with their
imagine
offense.
there'll be a three-peat? Yeah, if they can get Juju, get somebody else, maybe like Mike Williams, something to spark that. Get Pacheco back. Oh my goodness, it's going to be crazy. Anyway, so here's the game metrics here. Uh, Vegas loves the Saints, 2.5 points. I just checked before we got on the air. 21-16 Denver, but it's a 37.5 over under, so that's sad. The power ranks are sad. So probably not surprising. Dennis, I don't know. That kid looked good. Maybe that's our future. I don't know. I'm too jaded as the Aints fan, and so I'm probably too pessimistic. Denver is away, and New Orleans is been not as strong as I want in the rushing. They've been actually pretty easy. So Javante and whoever else should have their day. And it looks like passing is where the toughness is, and maybe the tight end. Denver's D, you definitely are in play for streaming because of the Spencer Rattler interceptions. So Denver's a good D play. New Orleans, it looks tough, tough. Looks like Kamara's and Juwan Johnson are going to have to be the stars. It looks like the Olave's probably not going to play, and Rashid, Dennis, I'm very
He,
skeptical about the
he,
passing.
yeah, Shahid's gone for the season. He's got a knee injury. He'll be gone.
Oh, he's gone.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard
Yeah.
that
He had an MCL.
today,
Yeah. They took it, got hurt last week,
but
but
they
came out
decide.
today that he's going in
Okay.
for surgery. So
Oh well,
he
I
will be
gotta I
done for
gotta
the year.
go to the waiver wire and get rid of him
Yep.
then.
Yep. They haven't put him on IR yet, but it's just a matter of time. And
Yeah.
uh, he's not
Um,
going to play. Olave's not going to play this week, and
so
Taysom Hill still won't be back.
oh man, so Vegas still thinks? Boy, Dennis, I'm skeptical here. As far as let me go back here. As far as the home away, Denver away loves to rush and actually does better passing and rushing. So uh, Denver is kind of skewing to being an away team. They're away. New Orleans is equal. It doesn't matter away or home. They're the Aints, and I guess that's about it. A little bit more efficient because they had 2, 3 early good games with Carr. Carr needs to come back, and we need to get Olave. I'm so sorry to hear about the other. So we're definitely cooked this season, and that memes or whoever this kid was that came out of nowhere. Let's see, where was that?
Yep.
Uh,
Bub mean.
Bub. Well, there you go,
Bub
old
mean.
Bub. Yeah, well, I need to throw this ranking out the door then. And Olave's, ooh, I don't even want to think about this game. Kamara, and they'll just load the box up, and it will be extra sad. So if Kamara can get me 13 points, oh my goodness, I will be pleased. I don't know. Mike Williams needs to come here, Dennis. That's the secret.
Oh,
We
that'd
need
be an
Mike
interesting
Williams.
move. That
We
would,
need we need him. With Shaheed gone, we need him. So I need to call my voodoo folks down there in New Orleans, and they need to get on to the Jets, and we need to fool them and get Mike Williams for nothing. So I'm gonna put the call in now. I'm using all my juju this week to try to get somebody like Mike Williams down there. What say you, Dennis?
So this line is changing rapidly. Um,
Yeah.
it is changing rapidly.
Did
In
it
fact,
change?
some
Yeah.
of the lines that I've seen now have Denver as a 2.5 point favorite, even though it opened as a 4 point New Orleans favorship. So I have a feeling all of the players missing on New Orleans is
Uh,
shifting this line.
yeah.
I still like New Orleans to win this game, believe it or not,
Wow. Wow.
because the only weakness that New Orleans defense has is really against the run, and Denver has not been able to run the ball consistently.
Mhm.
This is going to be, you know, how we've had some really exciting, real entertaining Thursday night games?
Yeah. This doesn't look like it.
This isn't, I would not be shocked to see this game turn out to be 12-10
Yep.
in favor of New Orleans. So I really like Bub Means. I have picked him up in a few leagues,
Really?
real cheap. Yes, I think he's got a real opportunity here to be a decent player. I made another, now that waivers are closed for Scott Fishbowl.
Yeah.
I can I can let you know that I think I found the right guy to
Uh,
add in Scott Fishbowl this week, because Rashid Shaheed was the number one player over even all the quarterbacks in Scott Fishbowl scoring because of his kick return and his punt return yards.
yeah.
You know who is the next man up, who has been the second man
Nope.
on kick returns this year for the Saints? Doesn't have a return yet because they've all gone to Shaheed.
Yep.
Jamal Williams
Oh, wow.
is the guy. So I picked him up.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a wait and see if he gets the return yards, but I grabbed him and I'm stashing him on the bench for now.
Nice.
If he gets return yardage and teams are more willing to kick to him
Yeah.
than they were to Shaheed, that could be interesting in the Scott Fishbowl or any league that scores return yards.
Nice.
He is worth that little speculative pickup. Plus, if anything happens to Kamara,
Hmm.
he's going to get some of the touches along with Kendra Miller. So I look at that opportunity as being interesting. Now, I do expect them to put another player back, and maybe it'll be Bub Means. That would be
Yeah.
even better. Or maybe it will be Jordan Mims. So either one of those guys might get kick return duties because they do need to put two guys back there. But for now, I'm taking the speculation that maybe Jamal Williams gets some return yardage. But yeah, I do like Bub Means.
Okay.
He showed in limited snaps that he can get the job done. Was he outstanding? You know, was he highlight reel guy? No,
Hmm.
but he did score 15 points
That's
last
good.
week.
That's good.
And I think he's got that chance to be the go-to wide receiver for the rookie, because he was working with the rookie with the second team offense in practice every day. And now that Spencer Rattler's the main man, I think he's got some familiarity with Bub Means more than anybody else on that roster. Cedric Wilson doesn't excite me, and none of their other wide receivers excite me. When you take Olavi and Shaheed out of the picture, it leaves Bub Means. So, and we saw him step up to the plate when both Olavi and Shaheed went down last week.
Okay. I
So,
need to I'm gonna do some dollar fishing for him, Dennis.
I'd fish and I'd set him on the bench for
Okay.
this week, just till
Yes.
you see what's going on, because this is going to be a low scoring game. I don't want any
I mean, Carr
Saints.
should be coming back
Yes,
pretty soon,
yes, yeah. And
week or two.
by the time he gets back, maybe Bub Means is in that Shaheed ish
Roll
role.
and Olave, so he could be a good two for New Orleans, which could be
A good
spiky.
flex. Could
Could
be
be
a spiky
spiky.
flex.
Yep.
And
Okay.
and the kid might have some talent. So,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
that's the kind of speculative pickups that I like to make
Well,
before.
Tillman has got my interest for $1.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. Tillman and Means are the two guys that I really think got a shot at doing something. And Bub Means is a big kid.
Yeah.
He was a fifth round pick. He's out of Pittsburgh.
Right.
He was good. He was a good solid college player. But how about 6'2", 215? So he gives you some size to go
Yeah.
with some speed. And I think he's got a shot, especially this week with nothing else, on the docket. But I like New Orleans, but I really like the under. I know the under's only 37, but
Yeah.
I would expect this to be in the mid 20s for points. Spencer Rattler didn't look bad, and I think the kid can run, and that might give the Denver defense a few headaches, but I do expect a very low scoring game. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out all of the cool stuff that the
Yeah, we
professor.
haven't talked about your articles yet.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
my articles are all up there. I've got the looking at by the points. I'm looking at who's been best and also looking at the consensus rankings of all four of my metrics that I'm using in season. Um, Been fascinating to take a look at that. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the Saturday podcast about what I've discovered with the consensus method that I'm using, because it's pointed out a few things to me, and we'll go into more detail.
Oh,
But you can
good.
read, you can
Good.
check out all of those articles over at the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. And of course, check out the professor's snap data. I am telling you, folks, when you look at snaps and you look at the scoring per snap, the way the professor does, it will open up your eyes and show you some of the guys that are just there off the radar screen, but have a chance to be successful in this second half of the season. So check all that out. Then come on back here Saturday for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks. Okay. Dennis, I don't know if I've got a lot of after the show. Do you want to talk about one of your articles or just wait till Saturday? Your
Oh,
choice.
we could talk about one of my articles if you
Okay.
want, if
Well,
you have some questions.
which one would you like to peruse then?
I would like to probably look at
Because you said you wanted to cover something Saturday.
yes, let's take a
You
look
want
at
to
the
the best?
best.
The
Let's
best?
look at the best, because I think this has been very intriguing
Okay.
to
Let
me
me
at looking at just the
share.
upside of players.
Let me share this for the after show. So here we go. So why don't you take it away? See what you want to tell us about the best index.
So the whole idea of the best index is I don't care about bad games. Okay, I care about who's consistently had big games. I just am looking at who is having the most impact on your best ball rosters this year. And it should come as no surprise that the best quarterback is maybe the biggest surprise that we've had, because I think if you asked 100 people and you explained the best index to them and you said, who's going to hit the best ball scorecards with the most impact of all the quarterbacks in the first 6 weeks of the season, you ask 100 people, I'm not sure if any of them would have said Baker Mayfield unless they were related to him. That's one of the biggest surprises for me. Not that Baker's having a great season, but that if you look at the statistics, both with the MVP index, where he's at a 150, 100 is elite, folks. 150 is insane. The only quarterback that's even been close to 150 for a season have been guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, who are doing a lot more with their legs. Baker can run, but he's not a guy you look at and say, oh, yeah, he's going to be, like Lamar Jackson-ish with his running. But he's getting those first downs with his legs. He's throwing the ball great. And Tampa's defense isn't as good as it used to be. So he's having to be this spectacular, but that's the one that surprised me the most was Baker Mayfield. And I don't know if he can sustain it for the whole year, but he's
I've
off to
been
a terrific
lucky,
start.
Dennis. I drafted him as my two on some, and I've been playing him over the ones that I thought, like
Yeah.
Mahomes. I have
Oh,
actually
God. Yeah.
I've bounced those guys back and forth and been leaning to Mayfield more recently over Mahomes. Yeah, been real happy with that. I like the Burrow. Uh, and Jordan Love has just been so
Oh,
good. And
yeah.
he was ignored, I thought, again. And of course, Mayfield was very much ignored.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield was a guy I have a lot on my superflex teams. He
Yeah,
was he was he was what I thought was a good third quarterback. I
right.
will be honest. I thought he was going to be my third guy that I sub in.
Yeah, yeah,
And he has been absolutely lights out. Now I did better at the running back position because you see
yeah,
the two names on the
yeah.
top.
Those are my two highest owned major RBs. Dennis, you and I were all our metrics, everything told us we wanted those two guys. You know, uh, just to let you know where I haven't been successful is because of my quarterbacks. I Dak killed me last week.
Oh, he's
You
been
know,
awful.
and he's had spiky weeks, and that's been tough. I yeah, that's been tough. But what's kept me in the game is Kamara and Henry.
Oh yeah, they've been fabulous. You know, DeAndre Swift the last 3 weeks
Swift
has
has
been
been
on.
good.
He's been rising up the charts and
Yep.
doing well. I've got so much Chuba Hubbard this year. I grabbed a lot of Brooks and Hubbard as a combo with Carolina. And even though the offense hasn't been better as I thought it would be, I mean, they've been a
Yep.
little better since they made the quarterback switch.
Yep.
Chuba Hubbard is a working class running back. He has just been super consistent. That has been a bit of a surprise, but I got him cheap. But I didn't expect him
Yeah.
to be this great. Now at the wide receiver position,
Look at
I was higher on
Godwin.
just I
Oh
was
my
higher
God.
on Justin Jefferson than some of the other elite wide receivers, but I didn't expect him to
See, I
be.
had AJ Brown over
I
him.
had AJ Brown over him too. And AJ Brown's been hurt. You might notice that he'll be moving up this chart quickly because
Yeah.
he missed time. So this penalizes guys for missing time. But Chris Godwin
Boy,
was the guy that is on so many of
I
my
didn't
teams.
get enough of.
Oh, you never get enough of the guys that you love like that. But Chris Godwin was I was all over him. I was telling people that Stefon Diggs would still be great, even with Nico Collins.
Yeah.
He has worked out. Jaden Reed and Rashi
Boy.
Rice were my
Yeah.
other two guys that I was
Yeah.
all over.
Reed was big
Oh,
time for me. Yeah.
been
Loved
been a
Reed.
great bargain because I went heavy with the premier running backs,
Yeah.
guys like Derrick Henry, that
Yeah.
I loaded up on earlier in a draft. So I had to hit on my wide receivers, and Chris Godwin, Jaden Reed, Rashi Rice.
Yeah.
They were three of my most owned wide receivers, and I've hit on all of them. Loved Brian Thomas Jr. as the rookie.
Boy,
I
that
thought
was a
he'd be
good
good.
call. Yeah.
Thought he'd be good.
Yeah.
I expected more out of Roma Dunze than we're getting.
Yeah.
But I also said don't expect much out of him over the first 6 weeks. So he's about where I expected him, but I think he will come on as time goes on. And at the tight end position, it has been garbage, hot garbage this
Yeah.
year.
But
It,
Kittle, I had him in about 15 of my
yep.
41, Dennis. He was my, if I missed the elite with Kelsey, then I
Yes.
took Kittle. And then my second, Cole Kmet and
You were all
Otten.
over. Yep.
Yeah,
You were all
so
over Komet.
I didn't get Bowers. I skipped Bowers, but I would pick up Kittle. In fact, 3 leagues I played last week, Kittle and Komet. I was so pleased with that super spot. I won't get that again. That was the highlight of Komet, but it was nice to play him with a strong Kittle week as well. And I'll I'll probably keep playing him in my flex. So what I did was Kittle in the tight end, but I would play him, Otten, in my flex. That's what I've been having to do because of the AJ Brown, the injuries and
Oh,
things.
yeah. Yep.
I had no choice. But fortunately, our tight end premium, I've got a little luck on some of those twos, and my three, I just want to, I still think Mo Alley Cox has, and Disley, as long as I think the other guys hurt, those guys are, Disley got me 8 points. So those are kind of my third, got to have somebody, and they've worked out pretty good, just to let you know. And just if Ingram gets hurt, go back to Strange. I used him while Ingram was hurt, and I guess the Joko's coming back, so I actually was able to pick him up cheap. People dropped him, and I picked him up. So I've been having to forge and hoard tight ends this year more than
Oh,
ever. I've
well,
never had to spend this much time on tight ends this
and,
year.
and,
I've
and
had.
and here with this chart or with this article is also a great way to look at the flex starting position. Now, we do play a lot of FPPC
Yep.
where those are all tight end premium leagues.
Yep.
But if you look at the difference between the number of players, so the concept of the best index, okay,
Yep.
if you are 1 for 1, so games played, you have a best equal to the number of games that have been played.
Right.
That's pretty darn good. Okay, that's a solid player at any position. Look at tight ends.
Yeah.
Tight ends,
Three.
there's only
Three.
one. There's
Three.
only one that qualifies of being 6 games in and
Yeah.
having 6 or more points. You had to drop the tight end position elite and solid levels.
Yeah.
And
But
that
Dennis, you
shows,
only got three.
yeah,
Look
you
at
only got
everybody
three.
else. I mean,
Everybody else is there, but we don't
six
even
or more.
have, yeah,
Yeah.
you can't even make an excuse. At 4, I dropped the tight end position down to basically 2/3
Yeah.
of a point per game,
Yeah.
and I still only got to 3.
Yeah.
So unless you are playing in a tight end premium league,
Yeah.
and only if you have injuries, even in a tight end premium league,
Yeah.
the number of tight ends that you would play over a running back or a wide receiver are minimal. The answer is Kittle, Bowers, and Komet, and one of them is going to be your starting tight end. So unless you have two of those three right now, nobody else made sense to start in the flex position other
Yeah.
than a wide receiver and a running back.
Yes.
You could even drop down a
Yeah.
whole nother group, but if you look at the population that exists at each of these levels, it's really eye-opening
Oh,
of how the points get scored in fantasy football. And it kind of gives you just a snapshot look. It punishes guys that miss games
yeah.
because there should be a punishment. When you're
Yes.
looking at the best of the best, if you miss a game or you have you miss a game, it's not quite as bad as having an awful game,
Right.
but in a best ball scenario, doesn't matter. A zero is a zero, no matter
Yeah.
how you get to that. So it's just very interesting. It's been
And
kind of a
folks, make sure you
fascinating
read
thing.
the conclusion. A lot of these, articles, the regular old bum articles that are out there, and you pay for them. Remember, no, this it. In fact, Dennis, when I tell my students, when you read a science paper, you don't read it from start to finish. You actually jump around. And I would say for your article, best to read first and then conclusion, and then get deep with those ideas that Dennis kind of reminds you of, like, okay, Baker, here we go. Godwin, here we go. And then scroll down and get the nuances. So even though Dennis presents it this way, if I taught this class fantasy football, Dennis, and was critiquing, not that you should throw the conclusion next, but I'm just saying the way it's structured, and I'm not going to change it, but the way I would read it would be beginning to, what is he wants to say, setting the table, what is best, what are we dealing with, and then tell me what he's going to tell me, and then he told me this, it's all here, and then I will go and parse through the data and think about numbers, think about relationships, and try to put some of these together. And just to let you know, Dennis, the only critique I would have would be take this data you've shown me and go through team level. In other words, there are probably some teams like Mayfield, and here's Evans and Godwin. And so Tampa Bay would have three members that are super best, that kind of thing. In other words, maybe that's a into the a half point season where you did that. Look at it at the team level to remind people of the landscape that Tampa Bay is right now. So is it Baker because Evans and Godwin are here? Is that why Baker's there? Yeah, I think you could tease out that. Not saying you have to do that each week, but maybe halfway through, you might want to put all this together in a team level way and present a little longer. I think that'd be really neat to see. And that's for the serious data hounds. That's not the number one, folks, Dennis. That's the few number twos that pay attention to us. And I know you guys spit out number two. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You guys
it,
are. Go
and
ahead.
the way I write these articles, I I really think you're exactly right. That's the right way to read a scientific article is I whenever I look at a weather study,
Yeah.
I look at the abstract.
Yes.
I want to know what they're studying.
Yeah.
Is the similarity in here is my explanation of what each of
Yeah.
my
The best
index
is. Yeah.
means. And it's the
And
intro, the
yeah.
introductory paragraph
Yeah.
and
You're
the
setting the
explanation
table
go
right here.
together.
That first
That's
paragraph sets the table. And
that's
this
my
is what we're going to
abstract.
be serving.
Yep.
And this is
Yep.
basically this is the whole meal right here in the conclusion.
Yeah, and I read every weather study that way because I want to see what the conclusion is. Okay. And then I go back and I try to fight my way through the math of it.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you. Sometimes in weather studies, the math goes over my head. And I will be like, okay, I'm going to assume that these guys know what the hell they're talking about when it
Well,
comes
remember
to the math.
if it's a peer reviewed, Dennis, anything it'll be called.
Yeah, so that's what I kind of assume. So I look at the conclusions, then I kind of, okay, how did you get here? And then look at the arguments, but I don't worry too much about the mathematics because, like you say,
Right.
it's all peer reviewed. They're going to
Yeah.
catch the oopses along the way,
Yep.
just like with Dr. Mann on climate change. They caught the whole hockey stick thing, how he got there. Now it took more than peer review. It took emails that showed
Right.
how he was cooking the data and the fact that other people couldn't get to the same data from the proxies was the interesting thing
Yeah.
that sort of gave it away. And then when the emails came out, it's like, oh God, we should have noticed this. But I always assume the math is right because it's been peer reviewed. Now we've seen a lot of peer reviewed stuff that makes it through
It's not
nowadays.
100%.
Not
Nothing
100%, but it catches the bads, the
sure
real
does.
blatant mistakes. And then it's just a philosophy thing. But you're right. That's why I write the way I do
That's okay. It's
because
not,
I'm because
Dennis,
I'm
it's not a fatal.
scientifically
That's
based.
not fatal at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad, but I find it interesting that you read my articles the same way I read scientific
Well,
studies, and
that's because that's how you do
yeah,
it. And if anybody's a scientist type out there, I use the introduction to, if there are concepts explained in the abstracts, like, okay, what does this mean? This inversion of the temperature, what? And then I'll find it in the introduction and read what they say about it. And then I'll jump to the discussion and the conclusions at the end. So that, in other words, and then I actually look at the experiments in the results section and go
yes,
by. And then if I have any questions, I'll look at materials and methods, like, okay, how did they measure this?
yep,
What is the
yep.
instrument? So it's not the way it's presented, but that's the way I read it. And I actually have a video, Dennis, Bush's way to read a science paper. And so all my students, if they want to, they can actually see how I take them through how I think you should read a science paper. And some the brighter ones will say nobody's ever told us that. They just say, here, read this, get out of my, get out of my face. I'm busy. That's what professors do. I ain't got time for you students. And I could tell you a lot about academia. Maybe one day I'll write that book on my opinion of administration and how things are going in academia. But anyway, uh, I have a whole video on how to do a science, how to read a science paper. If anybody's in science and y'all want that video, I can dig it up. Just email me through the Twitter, and I'll send you a copy. I mean, it's not worth for fantasy. It's not worth it for fantasy, but if you're a science or a data person or something that reads technical papers, this could help.
I actually think it does help in
Well,
fantasy
maybe
because
it does. Maybe
I
it does.
read fantasy football articles the same way too. But
Yeah.
quite often in the conclusions
Yeah.
at the end of articles, guys sort of give themselves away that they have not done the work necessary
Yeah.
that will convince me that it's more than anything but a hot take. When you read very well written piece on fantasy football, I come away with feeling like I'm smarter. A lot of times when I read stuff, Professor, I don't end up feeling like I'm smarter. That's sad.
Okay. I think we're done with after the show. So we had lots of fun. Glad y'all listened. Let me shut this puppy off.